Welcome back to the Outpost. I'm Scott Dubois. This is Peyton Barrett. This is Tim Baker. Today we're going to go through some big ideas from our last guest, John Woodall. We're so excited you're here. Welcome back to the Outpost. So guys, welcome back. Great to see everyone. Today is going to be, as I said earlier, a review of our session with John Woodall. We're going to try to unearth some big ideas, talk about what mattered most to us, but also in the comments from the community, things that mattered a lot to you too. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to start with a lightning round. Each person's going to say the 2 or 3 things that meant most to them. And then we're going to kind of go deeper dives. But before we get started, I want to pause. And do you notice anything different? When we sat and created the Outpost more than a year ago, we thought about a place where men could be known, a place that was warm, a place that was in itself so unique that it would draw people in. And you can see we're in it right now. This is wildest dream type stuff. And this place, these walls, were built for you. We're built for us. We're built for community. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you kind of enjoy seeing all the detail, and there'll be more at it as we go. But we're so glad you're here. And again, this is for you. So let's start with the lightning round. Peyton, kick us off.
Yeah. My lightning round, I've got 2. They happen to come both from episode 1 with John. In episode 1, we talked all about really why men today in the culture that we live in, the world that we live in, need a stronghold. And how the Outpost can be that stronghold for men, alongside hopefully the men's groups and community that they're in their daily life already. And if they're not, maybe this can be a bridge to help them get into that and open up to that idea. So number 1 for me was John in episode 1 said that Jesus was clear on where he came from, why he was on earth, and where he was going. Both of these really speak to, these 3 points really speak to his identity and his purpose. Jesus was very clear on his identity. His identity came from his heavenly Father, God. And it was because he was clear on his identity that he was able to execute upon his purpose with vigor, with intentionality, with endurance, and it allowed him to not get distracted when people wanted, hey, you should come, take over the Roman Empire and get rid of the Romans. That's not my purpose, And so I thought that was really impactful for me, because I'm always looking at things from the perspective of, I think we all are here at the Outpost, looking at things from the perspective of, if this was true, if this idea was true about men in our current culture today, how would that change the generational cycle of masculinity? Yeah. We talk about that a lot here at the Outpost. It's kind of one of the core ethos here is, how do we change the generational cycle of masculinity? And I think if we could all as men be so clear and rooted in our identity as beloved sons of God, and built our purpose and our kingdom here on earth underneath his, on that solid ground of a true identity as a beloved son, how would that change the way that we father, the way that we are husbands, the way that we lead at work in our communities? That was big for me. 2, also from episode 1. If you haven't watched episode 1, go back and watch it. It's full of nuggets from John. My second one was, why don't younger men seek older men for wisdom? So why do we have a vacuum of 30-year-old, 25-year-old, 35-year-old guys who are not out there actively seeking older men for wisdom. This could be older men in their church, older men in their community, older men at work, boss's boss. Hey, I'm trying to figure out my career. Can I grab lunch with you once a month and, just pick your brain on some things? Hey, I'm a brand new dad and I've got, a 1-year-old son, and he's starting to get to I'm thinking a couple years ahead, and I'm like, I have no clue. Like once he starts talking and we start having conversations hey, can I go find a guy who's, 10, 15, 20 years ahead of you and sit down and have conversations with him about, what. And so if we combine those two ideas, being strong and rooted in your identity and your purpose, and then also while you're rooted in that, walking alongside older men who can mentor you and walk with you and say, no, hey, you're getting off, on the left side or the right side of the trail. Here's what I learned in that season. Come back around. How would the combination of the two of those really change the way that men live their lives in this world today? Those were big for me, both from episode 1.
That's awesome. For me, the first big idea that I'm wrestling with was, think about who John Woodall is to us. Like he's the definition of a storied sage and had such profound influence on our lives for so long. And for him to say, we call it the middle seat. He didn't actually sit between us, but for us to be on
Poetic.
a 14-hour bus ride, and for him to say, I saw something in Scott, you and Tim's relationship that made me want to know more and made me wanted to know how to do that. That was profound for me. And I think Scott said it too in that, where he followed up with I didn't know what that was like until I found this brotherhood in my 50s. So there's this concept of brotherhood that John goes into deeper detail in, which I'll hit on when we dive a little bit deeper. We're not setting the right expectations. We're not raising our sons correctly where they don't have a concept of what brotherhood is. They don't go out there. Maybe it's back to your point. It's like if you had an identity and you knew there were people out there who could be really brothers, you wouldn't be satisfied with what you had normally. And so for John to admit that is so humbling for us because, as Scott says, we're just two knuckleheads. For somebody of the ilk of a John Woodall to say, I see the two of you together, and I say, I want some of that. So that was profound. It strikes me, and I'm flattered and honored. The other one, so that was from episode 2. And my second point comes from episode 3, and this one has really convicted me. I was thinking about it today. The whole idea of pain and suffering, where John was going, this is how we live, and I don't think you get to this without pain, and which is hard to digest and maybe something we don't want to hear. But the part that struck me was without pain and suffering, you don't build faith. Think about what it's almost like, and this is Tim Baker, I'm going to live my life in a way that minimizes pain and suffering. That's a goal. What if you said, my goal is to grow faith? That would change what you do. It would change the risk you took. And I'm not sure I'm ready to say what I learned from that, but that's a profound thought for me that I want to go deeper on. Those are my two.
My two are creation is groaning. The idea that the brokenness we feel inside of ourselves is part of a deeper brokenness that's in the world. And, I think about all the things in my life I've done to assuage that groan. I think about all the things I've believed that may have been true, most untrue, to assuage the groan, that aching of there's something wrong, there's something more. And it's, even at my age, that groan, we understand it now, but I don't think it ever goes away. That struck me because John at 70 something is dealing with it. In 60s and 50s, we're dealing with it. Peyton's dealing with it. It's kind of a tension that you live with, and it's on purpose to bring us home, home to Christ, home to faith, home to family, home to who we were are who we were made to be. That's a huge idea for me.
And so can I ask a question for that? As a younger guy, like looking ahead and knowing that I've felt that grown, and I think for me, it might have been different over the last 8 years through different seasons. Do you feel like that grown has always been the same for you? Do you feel like you guys have had different groans over time? Like, has that changed what the groaning feels like, or what you feel like it's caused by, or what you feel like it sort of orbits around? Does that make sense?
I don't think it has a common area. The groan can be a longing to spend more time with my wife when things get busy. The groan can be an itchiness for an adventure rather than being content. The groan can be somewhat exacerbated by the chatter that goes inside of our head rather than the peace of being present. So the groan kind of can show up in many places and forms. I know what it is now. So it's like I said, it's a tension that I live with, but I can't circle it around one area or something that's common. Can you?
No. For me, the concept is a little bit revolutionary. But intellectually, I get it. Like we're in a fallen world. We ought to be ingrown. Right? But I happen to be just really terminally optimistic and grateful. And maybe I need to think about that.
So in your case, you don't feel like you've really had a groan?
The way I interpret the concept is we're separated and we should feel the lack. I don't. And I don't know if that's just a lack of maturity. No, I'm not paying attention, or I've deceived myself. So for me, it's a real challenge to I need to get in tune with what's right. We're supposed to live as aliens, right? This is not what God wants for us, and we should be dissatisfied. And I'm pretty satisfied. And so maybe I'm doing something wrong. The opportunity for me.
Let's check for our groan. The other one that popped out to me was the idea of identity before achievement. Who a man's becoming, who we're becoming is we are who we are right now, but it's really more important is who we are becoming. And I think God loves the person that we are, and God knows already today at 59, in your 60s, in your late 20s, in your 30s, God knows who you are right now, and God knows who you are going to become. And he sees not just us today, me today, you today, but he sees who we are in the next 20 years or 30 years, if we get 30 years. And he's excited about that person too. And it makes me think about the whole concept of achievement and identity is so harmful. I think about when Jesus was baptized, and it's one of only 3 times in the New Testament that God speaks. And Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist, who had come right out of the woods, and basically says, "This is my son with whom I'm well pleased." And you have to understand the weight of that. The maker of heaven and earth looked at his son, who had done nothing.
He had not started his ministry.
Yeah. No one had been rescued.
No miracles.
No heal, no miracles, no Lazarus, no fishes, no loaves, no woman at the well, no somebody touched my robe, nothing. And his father said, "This is my son with whom I'm well pleased." And I think about the idea of identity and achievement and how that gets muddied. And if we could just live from that, knowing that our Heavenly Father feels that way about us. Now, who we are, but he also feels that way about who we're going to become. He knew what Jesus was going to do. He knew the trials that Jesus was going to go through. But even with that, at square one, as he was baptized with no portfolio, this is Jesus, non-rock star, private person. This is my son with whom I'm well pleased. if I just trusted in that in my 30s, in my 40s, if I just really believed in that, I think there would have been different. I would have been different. I probably would have taken some turns that I could have taken and didn't.
I wonder if this goes, we talk a lot about the adored son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you knew from the get-go, even just from your earthly father, that you were adored and valued, you didn't have to do anything. I think it may change the whole game.
You brought that up with John, I believe it was episode 4. You brought up with John that you don't know many men that you're friends with or even acquaintances with who, if you asked, did you feel adored as a son growing up, that you felt like would say, yes, wholeheartedly, I felt adored as a son.
I've never had somebody tell me, all the men that I've asked there. And I didn't do it for my kids. Like I didn't, you're young and you're trying to prove yourself and you're figuring out your identity, and those kids better get in line and they better make me look good. And if they're not on the top level baseball team, we got to try harder, and everything that we're doing to those boys in particular. Remember, my only understanding is boys is work harder and you better achieve, because you won't survive in this world without it. Wow. And so to your thought is, maybe Jesus had that all along. And for him, this is when I did Rob's Blessing out in Colorado, and I told him all the things that I love about him. And that night I was talking to him and I said, what do you think about that? And he says, Dad, you've told me those things my whole life. Now I don't feel like I did. And sweet boy that he is. But boy, if you've got a track record of just pouring love into your children, maybe Jesus wasn't surprised.
Yeah, but I think too, I think it's so pivotal as adored sons, but having a daughter, I know the weight, my approval, the weight, my praise, the weight of my time, the weight of support, the weight of, she's always beautiful to me. And she never had to ever wonder. And she never had to ever guess if she was loved. And she never had to guess if she was pretty. And did I see her? And for girls, that's kind of on the girl side. And, I think this adored son, adored daughter, I think is real. And I think how much do we get invested in bedroom, ball field, boardroom, billfold, in order to compensate for not having that kind of blessing that Jesus got from his Father before he was rock star Jesus. This is
because we're looking to fill that void. Yeah.
We're not living. We always say this, and I know it's trite. We've probably said it before, but it is the fruit that we live of living for affirmation that creates so much mess as opposed to living from it. And I think at any age, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, at any age, the idea that you can wake up in the morning and you're not as good as your top line revenue, you're not as good as your EBITDA, you're not as good as your last op review, you're not as good as your last report card, you're not as good as your last bonus check, you're not as good as your last quota statement, you're not as good as your last whatever it is, that you could say, you know what, I'm an adored son, I'm an adored daughter. Those things are great, but they're not who I am. And that separation and that clarity, I think in our world, I think it's getting harder and harder and harder.
To separate those two?
Yeah, because we're bombarded with images of performance and images of beauty and images of perfection and images of this is what success looks like today.
Yeah. And how you fall short.
And you got to do it this way. And
I said something that struck me, Scott, and we talk about our children that way, but imagine our spouses. Like, do we set as a goal? Like, I want her to feel adored. Like, how does that change the way she goes to work every day, and the people she deals with? And another thought.
And I think that it's funny you should say that. I think the biggest pain, the worst spills on aisle 9 that took years to clean up and mop up. And you don't ever forgive them. You forgive them, but they're not forgotten, right? But all had to do with moments where there's no way she could have felt cherished or adored. Mm-hmm. There's no way that there was no sweetness. There was no softness from me. There was no sweetness. And it had to do with kind of this performance. You get up in our careers and you're known for making things happen and moving things up and to the right. And then you get home and you kind of hold on to that same traction. Man, that was a mistake. It all came out of a lack. It all came out of scarcity. It didn't come out of abundance. So.
Yeah. So moving on to our deep dive then, Tim, I think you've got some thoughts from episode 2.
I want to talk. Yeah, I'm going a little bit deeper on my lightning round on brotherhood, because I think so much of what we talk about at the Outpost and what we hear, some of the feedback we're getting is, what about the guy out there who is really alone, and how does he get involved and find real brotherhood? So I thought John's comments were really profound in what he noticed, and so maybe this is a tip. If you're out there and you're looking for true brotherhood, he said what he saw in our relationship, Scott's and mine, but also in the way that we extended it to John, is he said, I saw curiosity, interest, and safety. Mm-hmm. And if you guys go back and see episode 2, it was iterative. He's like, and when it's comical for us because he would get back on the bus, we'd stop for lunch, we'd get back on, and he'd look at us, and he's like, "Is the game still on? Can I peel back the onion one more?" Like he was testing the theory of, these guys seem like they really love me and they're curious and they're providing me safety. That it took a few iterations for him to believe it, and then from his perspective, sounds like it was profound. And again, Scott and I have the benefit of getting to do this every year. I'm not sure it's as profound as having John Woodall learn from you, but and then a couple other thoughts around that is, John said that behavior is not modeled.
Mm.
Yeah, like it's rare, and I think you said it too. It's like you saw it from a couple guys from college, but like, what are we doing that we're not demonstrating what brotherhood should be and could be? And so that's a thought for all of us in all areas of life. The adored son, the cherished wife, what does brotherhood look like? Are we modeling it? And maybe to your earlier point is, are you pursuing men that do model it? Mm-hmm. Like, there are men out there that are truly great parents and great spouses. And young men, are you pursuing that guy? Because he probably would love to share you what he's learned.
I think that, and it's funny, I think curiosity and safety are very interesting, because you think about, for you to be curious about another guy requires you to take the focus off yourself and put it on them. And then the safety piece means that the more they share and the more you share, the more grace is extended, the level of acceptance goes up, the level of trust goes up. But both of those require, in some cases, a letting go. Both of those require almost a you first mentality. I'm gonna stand in the gap. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna be curious about you. And I'm gonna walk through every word that you speak with you. And it's a little bit more serving others and being curious, as opposed to hiding, fig leaf, protection, kind of white knuckling it. And it requires, as John did on that bus, is 16 hours long. He slowly but surely, as he revealed more about himself, he was stepping out to be curious and forward towards us and almost kind of behind himself. Which is really fascinating. Yeah. It's kind of like this. It's this, and then, it's weird.
Well, what we haven't said is that at some level, this is really about trust.
It really is.
And knowing John's story, and my story is similar, trust was violated early. And you spend the rest of your life struggling with trust.
That's exactly right.
And so it maybe took more iterations for him, but God bless the man who's got the courage to say, I'm willing to go back one more layer. Let's challenge yourself. Let's go. And more is out there.
I think, Tim, and you said it earlier, just to kind of complete the loop, as fathers, we have an opportunity to do this with our sons and daughters. As husbands, we have an opportunity to do this with our wives. Who on earth should be more curious about your wife, my wife, than me? Mm-hmm. Who on earth should be safer from my wife than me? I know. Mm-hmm. And and it works with kids too. And man, those are big nuggets that have a profound effect on relationship. They have a profound effect on legacy. Imagine with little kids and young marriages, and then they become teenage kids and a 20-year marriage. And then the kids leave your home, and the kids are gone and they're adulting, and you have a 35, 40-year-old marriage. And think about if that red thread that we just talked about ran through both of those. How would that be different?
Yeah.
That's profound.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So then this is a little bit different perspective, but then John, in that episode, he talked about, here's what, I'm speaking for John, here's what I was looking for in a relationship, in a brotherhood. Here's what he said: to be loved, to be respected, to be accepted, and to be known. And all those things are, I don't want to say the unknown, but think about the guy who's living with a mask, who's out there performing. You're only as good as your last touchdown. Is he truly loved? He may be respected for his accomplishments. Is he accepted? Well, I don't know that he would be able to answer that, because he's probably not taken the mask down, I'm speaking for myself, long enough to know. As John said, if you knew the real me, you wouldn't accept me.
Yeah.
And then what does it mean to be truly known? So I was so honored to be on that ride with John, and it's had a profound impact on me. So that's my big deep on John, and so proud to be a friend of John Woodall.
So you pulled yours out of episode 2. Mine happened to come out of episode 3. I think for me, in episode 3, John talked about, as a part of the suffering that he's gone through over a period of essentially the last 10-ish years or so, that we are men at war. And I think for me, the idea of being at war as men here on earth, women are at war just as much as men, but I think men, we have a particular responsibility that we've been given as being the man, to be the warrior that primarily fights back against that warfare in our home. And so to deep dive on that, for me, the idea of spiritual warfare, because yes, we are, we will find ourselves at war with things in the physical realm. But there's this war that we're born into, whether we realize it or not, that is going on in the spiritual realm. We might not always see it manifested here, but it's going on in the spiritual realm. And I think the sooner that we can open our eyes, that the veil can be lifted and we can come to see and realize and be conscious of the fact that there is a spiritual war going on in the spiritual realms, and that it will affect things here in the physical realm, the sooner I think we as men can sort of walk around with a little bit less resentment maybe and a little bit less of a chip on our shoulder, going like, why can't I get this world to form to the picture that I have in my head of what it's supposed to look like? Like, why do I keep having so many struggles in all these different areas? Like, why can't I just have 1 month where like it's just success after success after, because we don't live in that world. And to go back to the concept of the groaning, like we're always having that groaning. That groaning is in us. It's in creation, because we're not home. Like, this is not our home. And we feel the our soul feels the separation between God. And so I think for me, this concept of being men at war is personal, because it wasn't until about 6 years ago for me in my early 20s when I kind of woke up to, and the veil was sort of lifted to, what this concept of spiritual warfare, this concept from Ephesians 6, of why you need to have a full armor of God, right? And you don't need it. We don't battle against people, against our neighbors, against the guy that cuts you off in traffic. Believe it or not, we don't battle against them. We battle against spirits and principalities of the unseen realm, right? And when I started to wake up to that, it was like, oh, some concepts are starting to click here of like why things have not been falling into place the way that I wanted them to. Concepts were making more sense around addiction, around why does my flesh want to do the things it doesn't want to do, right? But my spirit knows the right thing, but my flesh, it's this spiritual warfare, temptation. And so I think the sooner that we as men can come to the realization and get on board with the idea that we are at war, this war didn't start because of something that we did. It started because it started at the beginning of time. And when the devil decided that he wanted to be God, this war started, and we're born into it. It's going to be going on until the day that we go home. And so how do we learn to fight that battle? How do we learn to, wake up every day? And we're not called to wake up every day and go, oh man, another day of battle. I guess, I'll just try to get through the day with as few cuts as possible, right? Like, that's not how we're called to get through it. We're called to battle back against it. And so what would that, look like in your daily life? How would you also coach your wife through that? Walk with your wife through that? How would you, and how would you partner with your wife to battle back against that in your own household, in your own daily life? But then also, how would you start to teach your sons at an early age, like, hey, you're in this battle, here's how to fight it, here's like the tools, here's the weapons, here's a shield, and a sword, and this is how you use them, the word of God and the shield of faith. I think that would be so impactful.
One of the biggest word pictures that I got on this was Eldridge at his boot camp when he came to Georgia, and he talked about couples being united in a foxhole, fighting a war. And so they get married, and they're in a foxhole, and they're fighting to be married, stay married against external forces. It's like they have one hand on each other and one hand on hand grenades, one hand on whatever it takes to hold the world back and do what they have to do. And then this couple in the foxhole at war decides to have kids. And at war, Monday through Friday, 2-4-7, 365, at war, you do the best you can. And you think about, you have a couple at war, imperfect, battling now brings babies into the battle
Who are also imperfect.
who are also imperfect. So you think about it, it becomes an overwhelming picture of you're always opposed. You're opposed with your spouse. It's a choice not to be opposed against your spouse, but to always stay with her. And then in this battle, in this foxhole, explosions going off, just life happening. Then you have to somehow find a way to give your kids that same bravery, that same, hey, let's get back to the truth. Let's get back to Jesus. Let's get back to who he says you are, as opposed to believe what they start to believe in 5th grade. And then they go through high school and middle school, and then college hits. And it's just more bombardment. Same family, same battle. Now the kids have left the foxhole. It's so hard watching your kids fight the battle. Our kids are opposed. I don't think you ever really outrun it. I think we end up training our kids to fight, and we try to train our kids as best we can to cope. I don't think it's formulaic either.
That's amen.
It's not formulaic.
No
I wish it was.
script here, yeah.
I wish it was.
Because spiritual warfare comes in so many different forms and sizes and timing and duration.
Yes.
And, I get to co-lead a group of middle school boys with one of my now best friends. And we really didn't know each other when this journey started 3 years ago. And now the sun is setting on our 8th grade year. And so we're coming to the end of that. And what's been really interesting to see, along with the 2 high school leaders that we have, is every time we have a big camp coming or a big event coming, the spiritual warfare, the problems that show up in our lives, like everything is going, the seas are calm, everything is going according to plan, our, plan, maybe the plan that we feel like we've worked up with God, and he's, and then, the cars start having a bunch of problems,
Right.
or, family member comes down with some big sickness, or there's a death in the family, or you lose your job, or there's been all these situations and at first we'll sit down or we'll text about them or whatever. Oh man, like that's crazy that's happening. And then we kind of step back for a second and go, whoa, that's not coincidence. Like this stuff is sent to drain us, to distract us, to pull our focus, to go, man, to get in bed at night and wake up every morning and go, really, another day of this? I don't know that this isn't what I want. This isn't the picture that I had in my head, And then we get to that weekend of camp where we're supposed to pour out into these guys who were there to mentor, and there's nothing left in the jar, and I think where we've also gotten to see, and so realizing that isn't coincidence, like that is the enemy, that is the devil and his spirits and principalities that have decided that what we are going to do on that particular weekend to try to raise up the next generation of kings here on earth, under God's kingdom, is not something that they want to see happen. And so they're going to throw literally the kitchen sink at us in the weeks leading up to that. And it's not coincidence. But we've also gotten to see God redeem that just in that scenario specifically, where then we get to that weekend and the only option that we have is to go, God, this is not by our strength, it's by yours. And also just getting to walk through that together, he and I, and with our high school leaders in, oh man, like that sucks you're going through that. We're here to do it with you. And we get to model that for our guys to see how we, go through that together.
Community.
Yeah.
Well, you will be opposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
Scott and I, in all of our youth ministry and our work in camps and stuff like that, is we've every time you experience that, the week before camp, you're gonna be opposed. And what we know now is, because we've done it enough, if we can just stay faithful, keep your eye on the prize, God's gonna show up in ways that are so profound, and we get to witness God at work in ways that if we were discouraged or weren't paying attention, we would miss.
Yeah, we would.
But gosh, does he show up. So,
And we've just learned how important battle prayers are. I talk a lot with my peers about battle prayers, and a lot with the guys that we mentor in our middle school group about battle prayers. And sometimes they're long, like the battle prayers that I pray for certain people in my life in the morning every day during my quiet time is a little lengthier. But then you also have battle prayers that you literally are praying while you're actively on the battlefield, face to face with your enemy, which, I mean, name a problem. The cars are broken down. There's a health issue, name your problem. You're face to face with the enemy, where you don't have time to go, wait, everybody pause.
Yeah.
Everybody, the car, it's on the side of the road and there's some pressure scenario or whatever. And, or the kids are screaming or whatever. You don't have time to go, okay, everything pause. I'm going to take 20 minutes and I'm going to, sometimes like my battle prayer that I'll utter internally and externally, usually more than 100 and 150 times a day, is I reject that in Jesus' name. And it's based on Zechariah 3:2, when Jesus literally, or God and Jesus are in heaven and Satan's there, and Ezekiel is kind of getting to witness this whole interaction. And God says, I rebuke you. And, so there's times where in the morning my battle prayers are much longer, much more poetic. They pull from much more scripture. They're based on much lengthier pieces of scripture. But in those times when I'm face to face with a problem, with opposition, with spiritual warfare, and I don't have time to go into that whole thing, I reject that in Jesus' name. And I can say it's like that. It's quick. It's a slice with a dagger. And I think I've just noticed with problems with lust that come up 1,000 times a day when you're out in public, and you're a single guy, and I know married men struggle with it just as much. But just to say, I reject that in Jesus' name. That's something that is not in line.
Calling out.
Exactly. You call it, and I've noticed a lot of times. I've been practicing that now for about 4 or 5 years. And I've noticed now that I will catch myself saying it in my head, reciting it in my head, and going, whoa, why did I just say that? And realize, oh, I just glanced over in that direction towards that girl in the grocery store or whatever. And that was not like that. And my heart is, I would like to believe, becoming trained to go, that is not in line with the man and the character that you're trying to build. Reject that.
That's awesome.
And so what would it look like if that, and I've also noticed that I started that ritual to battle lust. And now I've noticed that it's starting to happen when I get prideful thoughts, or when I get depressing thoughts, or when I get, like, it's starting to spread to other things.
It's almost like you're feeling the Spirit move, and you're rebuking it.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Have you heard John Woodall? The ABCs? Have you heard the ABCs? Okay. It's when you notice somebody, acknowledge, say it's a young lady, bounce your eyes, and confess, right? Isn't that it? The ABCs?
Yeah.
It's a Woodallism.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I think you've got some from episode 4.
Yeah, I think episode 4 is what really hit me. Episode 4 came out of the Brad Paisley song, Letters to Me. And he goes back and he revisits his childhood and his adolescence and his teenage years. And he as an older man now who's done well, he starts to revisit all the things at that time that were a big deal then, that have worked themselves out. They were life-defining then. but now not so much. They could have been false beliefs then. That heretofore he's learned the truth. And I think about how powerful it was to hear John in his 70s look back and address John in his 30s. I think about, at 59, talking to my 39-year-old self and my 35-year-old self. Same thing with Tim in his 60s, talking back to his 35-year-old self. And I think that what it really brought up to me is the idea that what would change for me, what would change for you, what would change for others if we spent more time celebrating and really sussing out how far we've come, really giving ourselves credit for how we've grown, for understanding where we've grown. And I think in the same accounting, understanding where we need to grow. This whole idea of, self-leadership is great, but I think it's really self-examination, because I think when we fully know ourselves and fully love ourselves then and forgive ourselves and extend ourselves grace, I think we become that much more freer to love others. The first of whom is Jesus. And I think there's a lot there in that analysis, in that going back, in that reconciliation. What does it look like for us, for me, for you, for others to be free? In truth, that's not who I was. This is who I am. Yeah, that was then, but I really am a new creation. And this is how I know. I really was that kind of husband when I was younger. But 20 years later, this is where we've grown to. And I think always looking at that growth and recognizing it and celebrating it, but also, as I said earlier, understanding where we still need to grow. John at 70 something is still growing. Each of us at our age, 20s, 60s, late 50s, still growing. It's a fallacy to think that we've come as far as we're going to come and we're done, and really pivotal that he is done with us. So this letters to me, this idea of going back was just so profound, just because I always want to be the guy at any age that's still in discovery mode.
Right on.
I'm still more curious now than I was 20 years ago. I'm still more open to learn, to be loved by my wife, but also to be, made holy by my wife.
Yeah.
Hey, honey, have you thought about? Hey, why do you always? Hey, can we talk about that? With open hands. And I also see it now with my kids. Just a story. I asked my father to be my best man, kind of out of duty, obligation. He'd done so much for me. He was never going to be the leader of the parade, but I at least wanted to honor him for what he did for me. Adopted me, took care of me, really introduced me to Jesus. That's all he really needed to do. But I did it out of obligation, and I sat in my kitchen the other day, and my son recently got engaged, and he was going over the place, and they finally got a date, and we're so happy. And I said, well, how many groomsmen you have? And he goes, well, they're going to be, maybe 8 to 10 per side. I'm like, that's going to be great, man. We're so excited for you. He's 30. And he goes, you're going to be in there. I'm like, I'd be honored to be a groomsman. No, it'd be super cool to be a groomsman. I promise I'll behave, and it'll be fun. I'll behave. I promise. It will be like, I'm not even there, but I'm there, but I'm not even there, And he looked at me and he said, and I want you to be my best man. And I received that. And then I said, you know, buddy, he has such an amazing bench of friends. He has such an amazing peer group from Athens. I looked at him and I said, you know, buddy, you know, I'm always going to be your best man. I don't need the title. I'm always going to be for you. You know, it's okay if you pick one of your mates. It's totally cool. And he looked at me and he goes, Dad, I'm having you be my best man for me. That's what I want.
Austin.
There was no obligation there. There was no anything, but it was so hard for me because I went back and did the letters to me when I asked my dad, and I realized what that had come from. And it was so nice that my reaction to give him that back and say, no, really came out of that letters to me analysis that I did. But it was so nice that he said, no, I'm doing this. I want to do this. And he started crying. Monica started crying. I was crying. And it's just that sweet. Understanding what he did and why he did it was so profound for me. This is a 30-year-old talking to his almost 60-year-old dad. And it really triggered me going back to the 27-year-old Scott.
When you got married.
Who made his dad his best man. And such a different relationships, different men.
Yeah.
But that kind of analysis, I want to keep doing it.
It sparks in me the idea of the core work that you have to do to write that letter to yourself.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, if I'd only known, and if somebody had loved me enough to tell me that. Yeah. That then what I think it did for me was it opened up, well, you could do that. You can't tell your 35-year-old self, but you know what? You know, a lot of men think about transit leaders, our middle school ministry. Yeah. You know, I've got 16 transit leaders that I mentor. Well, you know, all of them could use that too. And for me, it just opens up the possibilities of you've learned something the hard way. As we've said before, more often than not, it was failure, something I didn't do well, that now you have the opportunity to go sit down with somebody and give them a chance, because they're not necessarily going to take it. And I wouldn't even tell them to take it. Just like, hey, here's another way to think about this. I know you're getting all kinds of attention at work and whatever. Do you try to be home as much as you can, to make as many meals as you can? Do you really speak to your wife's heart? I mean, those kind of conversations would not have occurred if I didn't do the work for, boy, I wish somebody had told me. Yes. Oh my God.
You know, it's funny. What you just said reminds me of, do you remember all those years that we would have men write their obituaries? And not their obituaries, I'm sorry, their eulogies. And every year we would hear men write their eulogies, and it would invite the process of how I want to be remembered and where I am now. It's the same process of what was important now versus important 25, 30 years ago. And I remember Tim and I would always, we'd always kind of update our obituaries as Madison got married and engaged to Noah, and Rob and Ina got married, and the obituary now with Timothy as Tim's only grandson. And you just think about, it's the same kind of analysis. How do you want to end? How do you want to be remembered? What's the gap between that and where you are now? What can you learn from that gap? What can we learn from the gaps of where we've come from? It's the same kind of discipline. I know it's easy to it's better to hit the easy button. I know it's more comfortable just to stay on the path. I know it is easier just to go to work and do what you do and perform. I know that. I've been there. It's not as easy to hit the pause button and have these comparative moments. Eulogy to life, 60 to 35 or 60 to 30. And I would just encourage folks, to pause and spend that time with themselves. Spend that time on themselves. And I would encourage them to invite God into it. God, I remember when, and this is where I am now. Help me understand all that I was supposed to learn there, and have I learned it? I just think there's powerful moments. We're not wired like that. We're wired to tuck the ball and run. We're wired to compartmentalize and keep moving forward.
Yep.
And I think, ultimately, I think we miss opportunities because the freer we are in Him, the freer we are to follow and do that which He's called us to do.
Right. Well, I think about putting to bed some generational, I'll call them curses, but like, you with some really strong, courageous leadership can save your children from mistakes that are learnable.
Yeah.
And you know what? Then they're going to be that much better with their kids. And you're evolving your lineage with real wisdom, intentionally, passing down wisdom. And again, 99% of the time it's things that I got wrong. So there's no puffing up. It's like, boy, if I could go back and do this again, and you know what, son, you have the opportunity to do it right. Yeah. And boy, they listen.
What I wouldn't give. What I wouldn't give. We were sitting with a married couple that we're going to start working with, and we were talking about getting started. And the conversation came up about just getting ready to get married. And they're such a sweet couple, so amazing as they are right now, and they're about to come together. They've dated for a while, and we sat down to breakfast, and they gave us a 100-year-old Bible.
Wow!
And I just listened to Jensen Franklin preach on the deep well, how his sons went back, his grandson and his son went back, and basically cleaned the well that Abraham had started.
Wow.
And the idea that each of us as men, each of us as couples, each of us as we're parenting and husbanding, each of us has a chance to prepare a well that is so deep and so clean and so clear with good living water that it impacts our kids, but it also lasts for generations. And I thought to myself, no one in my family that I know of has been a God follower or Jesus follower for 100 years. And I thought, well, I've been a Christian since I was 17. And then my kids are in their 30s and they're going to make their way. And I thought to myself, this Bible, shows the power of a deep well, and we're just getting started. And I thought to myself, how cool could it be 100 years from now? And this Bible's 200 years. Like, what could be the deep well of our families and our marriages? What deep well are our kids going to go keep clear and clean for their generations and future generations of living water? And I just, it was quite a moment.
That's awesome.
But it's the appreciation of the 100-year Bible only really comes to be profound when you realize, when you do the Brad Paisley and go back to, I'm still young at this. I'm still young at this. I have so much more. So just a really cool moment. Well, guys, this was a great walk through the John Woodall.
There's a lot of wisdom that was spilled on us.
We had to sit here for about 45 minutes and cull down each of our lists.
I got 100 things I still want to talk about.
We got pages and pages of notes that we wanted to cover and didn't get the chance. So
this could have been 2 hours.
Yes.
So we're so glad that you're here, and thank you so much for joining us at the Outpost. 2 quick things. First of all, the Outpost has a community that we're going to call the Stronghold. When you go to theoutpost.com, you can see there's a place to join the community. That community is important because it's where we build our live events from. So very soon we're going to have a live event with John Woodall. It's going to be a Zoom with all the men that are in the community where they can live interact with each other and share comments, questions with John Woodall, which we're super excited about. So we encourage everybody to join that community and be a part of these live events. They're very special, and I can't wait for that time with John. The second note is in our community, we have heard from several guys about the need for forgiveness and reconciliation, wisdom, forgiveness, children and parents, forgiveness and reconciliation in other relationships like marriage. So listening to the community, we're bringing that to you. So very soon, the next series from the Outpost will be on forgiveness and reconciliation and shame, and just some powerful ways for us to stay together and closer to Jesus, and ultimately closer and closer with the people in our lives. So that's all for now from the Outpost. Thank you for coming, and God bless.